This conference will now be recorded.
Thanks for joining today's SONiC community meeting. Today's topic is platform test and SSD diagnostic tooling. Before that, a few small announcements. The first thing is, as you know, that we are working hard to improve the SONiC documentation to make developers and users' life easier. As part of this effort, we first establish a new web UI so that all the information you can, it will be easier for you to find all the information on one page. Second, we refresh the architecture document to have a detailed database DB relationship, how and the components, how they are connected. As the third step, we did refresh the CLI documentation. So thanks to Canon from Dell, who is driving this. If you go to the our web, the web of SONiC, you go to wiki. You go to command reference. We refreshed this based on 2018 November image. So we have a much detailed and the up-to-date CLI command and how to use it. There are a few things actually needs to be clarified or to be to add a little bit more content for the command line. We are working with the feature owners to finish that, but 90% of this document is accurate, is up to date and accurate, or 95. Yeah. Let me pause it here. Any questions? So as the next step, we are still working on creating a user manual. So for anyone who would like to adopt SONiC, make their life easier. So please stay tuned. Come back to check the SONiC wiki if you need. So this is the first announcement. The second announcement is OCP has a few events coming in the coming months. The first one is Technology Day in Taiwan on May 30th. The second is in June 25th week. There's a Technology Day in China and Technology Day in Japan. All these are one-day event with speakers presenting topics, covers different areas in OCP with OCP projects. So for the local people, regional OCP community members, that you are welcome to join those. You can find event time on the OCP calendar. Okay. The third one is we have a test group. We already send the mailing list to everyone. A lot of people joined. Our first meeting will start tomorrow, Pacific time from 10 to 11. That's a kickstart meeting. We will talk about agenda, how to improve SONiC test and stuff on there. So in the coming weeks, we will also have MLAG L2 related speakers working group established. Please stay tuned. Okay. With that, I'm going to give time to Mananox to lead today's discussing. So, do you know who will present today?
Hi, Chin. I'll be presenting. It's Mikola.
Oh, Mikola? Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we are able to see it.
Okay, so let me present the SONiC platform test plan on behalf of my colleague, Xin. This test plan's original motivation was to check the Mallox hardware management package functionality on our platform, but later it was expanded to cover all the platform-related components, including fans, thermal sensors, SFP transceivers, etc. And some of the following tests are Mallox specific, others are common for all vendors, and the community is welcome to use common tests. So let's check out the test cases and hear feedback. To verify the hardware management package works as expected, we will be running this test on all of our support platforms. And the first test case is Mallox specific. It aims to check if our hardware management is behaving as expected. So let's skip that. The next one is common for all vendors. So it will check the show platform summary output as the PSU status and the show platform CC from. First criteria is to for the show platform summary to have all the needed fields. Also, the PSU status should be correct for all the PSUs, and we can toggle the PSU with PDU, so this test will be automated. Also, yeah, the CC output from the show platform CC should be correct format, and also the same as the one decoded from the actual EEPROM file. The third test is just running the sensor test. This should cover the sensor part. Any feedback so far? Okay, so
how do you automate the toggle the PSUs?
In some of our labs, we have the rack power distribution unit application, and so the PSUs can be toggled remotely. This is actually something we can take some feedback from the community. Maybe there are other ideas how to test this.
Okay, so in that case, you mean that we need some script automating on the PSUs. We can toggle those PSUs.
I think that it can be something like we do for the fan-out. Like there is a script which depends on vendors or lab facility that we should use in the test. While if there is different way to do that which is not available for all labs, then it can be rewrite or something like that. Does it sound something that will be okay from your side, or you have other suggestions?
I think then we might need some, the test need to be a little bit clear that I think we need to embed that information in the test topologies. Right. So first the PSU information, the login information, so that other people can add those information in the test bed, and later add support for their own PSUs. And then I think the test need to mark clear that you check for those informations. If those information is not available, then don't run this test. If it's available, then you can run the test.
Yeah. So let's move to the next one. The next one is to check the SFP presence and the transceiver EEPROM. Both SFP show presence and show interface transceiver presence should list the status for all ports, and it should be the same status.
Just a moment, Nicola. There is a note here about these SFP that we can use the ETH tool, and I think that this is something that is platform dependent, and it needs and I think that in some cases where the CLI or there is extended to what is the CLI provides, and we want to verify that, then we should have also something which is in addition to the generic test, which can be as platform specific.
This test we can barely hear you.
Okay, I'm going over the document that you just now present, and you're saying that you will use the SFP tool to show command to check the SFP status and the configure SFP, which is great. Then there is another note saying that we can check the information using the ETH tool. And I am not sure, and this is something that we might want to get the community feedback, whether this is something that is supported by all platforms, or this is a platform dependent. I know this is something that Mellanox will allow based on the driver that is responsible for the SFP, but I'm not sure that this is something that is available on all platforms. So if we have something that we want to extend on top of the CLI, which is commonly used by all platforms, then we need to create some part of the test, which is a platform dependent, and then it will be valid only for specific.
Yeah, I think this is platform dependent. It's use either tool. I think other platform wouldn't be able to support this.
Yeah, there was a discussion with Microsoft, and it was decided that this test will be most probably implemented with PyTest. So I think PyTest will provide means to mark some of the test cases as platform dependent and run or not run them based on the text.
This one, that only part of the test will be platform dependent, because the CLI part of the SFP, right, is something that is valid for all platforms. So I agree that if you have a full case which is a platform dependent, then it can be ignored on the platform. But here what I see is that this is something from the validation that is part of the SFP case, and not as a different case.
Okay, of course, the whole SFP test case should be common for all vendors, and the S tool can be the only thing that is optional. Of course, we should make sure that the that test case, the final test case, when implemented, can be run on all the vendors.
I'm not sure that we stated that or not, but are we going to have it for all topologies? Like it can be on PTF and T0 and T1 and so on?
None of these tests rely on topology, and this
Okay,
test is
so,
not topology aware.
okay, so the assumption is that we always have the maximum ports connected? Because then you will need to compare it with something, right?
Yes.
So I do think that we need to read the configuration and understand what is that we are expecting in the show command to be shown. How many
Yes.
interfaces or something like that. So it should be, it can run on all topology, but it should be topology aware.
I don't think that just providing topology can describe all the ports that are connected or not connected on the switch, because some platforms have too much ports. But judging on topology, we can have a list of ports that should be connected with the topology applied, and based on that, do the checking, at least on the ports that are defined by the topology. Yeah, I checked. I talked with Xin on that issue, and he said that it may be not automated in whole, and maybe it will require to have some external input on the state of the ports.
Yeah, I think maybe you know, in some cases might be that the user can read a file, which is what port are connected, what port are not connected, so that the test can read the file and then compare with the output.
Yeah, this is one of the options, and I think that's what Xin was going for.
And also, I think you know, actually those files we have defined in the test infrastructure there is a link files. We can probably read that file to know whether the port are connected or not connected to the fan out. So that we'll know the transfer receiver connectivity information from that
Yeah,
file.
I think that we should find the proper way to get the connectivity, and based on the connectivity to validate the show. I agree.
In general, do you have any, have you automated any test case for online insertion and removal of, say, PSUs or fans or even the optics?
No, this test cases, they require manual intervention.
Okay, sure, thank you.
The only thing with the PSU is that what Nicola said at the beginning, that if you have the facility in the lab to, for example, to shut down the PSU or to bring one down and one up, then you will be able to get the status of that. But pulling out and and getting in, that will require manual intervention. And that is not part of the automatic test that we would like to publish. Internally, we will have to do that, but it's not going to be like a Python or anything.
Okay. So next is to check.
So just trying to make clear is I think this set of tests is all trying to automate the insertion removal, which requires the physical touch of the switch, is not in the current scope of these proposals, right?
There are a few manual tests listed here, but as they are not automated, they will not be a part of the like test suite that you run every
Oh,
time.
right. Yeah, it's not part of the automated test, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So next one is to verify that the transceiver EEPROM is of correct format and present. Okay. The next test case.
Nicola, there is a to-do here, and you might want to ask the community for feedback. Can you go a little bit up? Here, the SFP util reset command. So I think that what we need is to understand if the expected behavior, which is expressed here, is the same as we are expecting on other platforms. So it would be great to get that feedback as well. So the only thing that we can right now verify is that the command was done without an error. But if we want to verify functionality, that might be requires something which is more than just validating that the configuration was done without an error. So otherwise, we might need specific cables or specific connectivity. And I think that we should not assume that part of the automation. Do you agree about that?
I think it's the stages, right? So I think eventually we would like to verify the actual EEPROM informations. But I think it can be separated into stages.
Okay, and so once, as we mentioned below, we have the option to read that through the ETH tool and verify that. So we just need to know how to verify that. So this part of the verification, whether it's really done lower on the hardware, then we will use a specific per platform. Okay, so we will implement that through the ETH tool, while others vendors can do it through a different way.
I think the ETH tool is not. I think it's not the design objectives for SONiC to support the ETH tool.
No, that's why I'm asking to know what is the way that you think we should verify that, regardless of the fact that we want to verify that on ETH, because this is something that reads directly on our drivers, which is good for us to validate as well. But the question is, how do you want? You want us just to read the EEPROM and then see what is the status?
Yeah, sure. It's a little bit broken, but I think this test, I think, to verify there's a multiple levels. I think most of the information passing, I think that should be done in this SAP util unit test, where we have sample EEPROM data and just verify whether we decode them correctly or not. Right. So in terms of a system level test, I think we probably we don't need to specifically verify those decoding algorithms that's supposed to be covered by the unit test of the SAP tools.
Okay, so what we are going to do is just verify that while doing off, we get the note of disabling, and if we do on, then we get the enabling and the reset as well. So we will verify that no errors and there is always okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is, as for unit testing, I have another question, because I don't think that we do have the unit testing as part of PMO. Maybe I'm wrong. Is there an interface for unit testing in PMO?
Yes, I personally cannot hear you clearly.
Is it better?
Yeah, this is better. Yeah.
Okay, so my question was whether do we have an infrastructure for unit testing as part of the PMO? Because I might be wrong, but I'm not aware of one.
I'm
For
also.
some reason, yeah. At the end, I don't know if you're getting away from the speaker, but at the beginning it was okay.
Liati is asking whether we have such unit testing. Do you know this answer?
You are asking Joe?
Yeah. Is he in the meeting?
Is he on?
Okay, maybe we can take it offline. So when we talk about system level, we verify from the CLI, okay? And any additional that we want to do underneath might be considered as unit testing. And then we need to think about what is the way for unit testing PMO. That's correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Okay.
I think there is one case that we normally found is that sometimes it could be that their indexes have some offset. Like for example, if you query the Ethernet 0, it actually return the information of Ethernet 1. So those information probably we can have a not fully populated system, and when we query, we would be able to make sure that all the ports all the the populated ports will get the data, and while the non-populated port will not get the data. But if there's a swap of those indexes, that can help us to find out.
So we need to make sure that SFP util has unit tests. The next test case is to check the XVRD information in the database. So we will check if the transceiver information is available for all the ports, and if the entries have the correct format and have all the fields. This one is pretty straightforward. As the next,
I think we need to change all the ports to the ports that are populated in the system.
oh yeah.
Yeah, like I said, like the previous one, we said what is the connectivity, and based on the connectivity, you need to validate.
Yes, sure. The next two are Malloc specific. say check the hardware management behavior. And the next are we'll check the status of transceivers, interfaces, and crucial services like SYNCD and SWSS after some actions like SYNCD and SWSS restart and reload configuration. The idea is to implement a few checker scripts that can be reused from different points, from different subtests in this test suite. One of the test cases is to do the SYNCD and SWSS restart and run the checks. Another one is to run the checks after the configuration reload. And yeah, the next one is also utilizing these scripts to check the status of the system after different reboots. And of course, we need to take into consideration that some platforms may not support them. So the test should be marked as should take into consideration the different vendors. The following tests require manual intervention and will only be executed when there is a new hardware management big release or a new platform bring-up or something like that. So the tests are to plug in and plug out the optic cables, to plug in and pull out the PSU modules, the PSU power cord, and the fans. And all of these tests leverage these status check scripts. And of course, all of them should pass. The design actually is a bit outdated. As I already said, we decided that this should...
Before we go to the design part for this manual test, so I'm thinking like, do we need to get more detailed steps so that if people are interested in performing those manual tests, they would have a exact step to follow?
So he wants to know what is the how to do the status of each one of them, or how to get the status of the interface. What are the commands to be used in order for that? That's what
right. Like
okay.
yeah, right. Yeah, like the expected output.
Yeah, we can extend it. Maybe it's worth. I don't know if it's worth or not, but do you want to split that into different? No, it will be. We will do it on the same document. No problem.
Yeah, I think it's yeah. So if we have this manual steps instructions, we can probably move them into the SONiC management test repo. We can create something like a manual test steps there, and then people can follow that steps to do those manual tests.
Okay.
Mikola, as we just agreed to change the design to be like PyTest and not the Python, do we want to update this section and send it to the community for feedback and worst case to do a follow-up? Because I think that it's not up to date based on the latest decision.
Yes, the design is not up to date, but the design outline remains the same. We want to have the single entry point and to have all the modular test cases and the reusable scripts. The design outline should probably remain the same. Yeah, but the design document can be updated.
I think the PyTest have a kind of guideline to how to classify those tests into different groups. I think we should follow those practice. You know, having the proper folders, and then put all the related tests under that folders and have some proper metadata to annotate those tests. I think that once we have more detailed design of those PyTests, we can have a follow-up on that.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Second part is can you please make Andrei a presenter?
Who is that?
Andrei.
Andrei. Okay. We can see your screen now.
Okay. So this is an attempt to extend SONiC knowledge about platform parts, this time SSD, and particularly we are interested in SSD health, some smart parameters which can be fetched from the disk and shown to user. Also, it makes sense probably to have a daemon which will monitor this periodically and report or raise some alarm like we have for temperatures. So the CLI, I suggest to extend the syntax of show platform at show platform SSD health. This command simply without parameters will show some brief information about the disk. We can discuss what should be shown, but I think for user to quickly check what's up with the disk, some health which can be calculated somehow and show the disk varying, and maybe temperature, if available, can also be interesting. I suggest to add commands verbose and vendor. So the command SSD health verbose will show some more parameters, something what else we can fetch from the disk, like manufacturer, maybe firmware version, serial number, whatever. Also, many disks provide information about how long it was powered on, how many times was powered on, and some other stuff. Need to compare other disks from other vendors to pick that parameters because some are vendor specific, some are generic, so this can be decided. Also, since every disk manufacturer usually provides its own utility and only manufacturer knows what to read and how to interpret some attributes. In specification, there are ranges of attributes which are vendor specific. So I suggest to have subcommand vendor. So full command will be showed platform SSD health vendor. And since we cannot adjust to every every vendor output, we can print the entire output of the utility, which is meant to work with that disk. Okay. And this is an example.
Hey, quick question. So, what is the motivation behind adding this SSD health command? So, do you think SONiC is doing more SSD activity, and that is the reason you want to add something like this? I just want to understand the motivation behind implementing.
Here is an example. We have this is a live output of the utility from one of our test devices. So after 18,000 hours, it's quite. I'm not sure all that hours was on SONiC. We have only 72% of disk left. I also saw devices with less than a half. So if you,
I think it depends on how many resets it is done, on how many things that happens, and it's not, and it depends on how rapidly you are using the SSD, and not in the real life system, but in the one that you are doing in regression, and you are running with a verbosity which is high, you are using it very highly. So you can reach to like after a few, I don't know if it's a year or more, you can reach to a case where your health, the SSD health is not optimized, and you want to be aware of that, and maybe to replace something in advance.
here the utility predicts the remaining lifetime of the disk as 4 years and 3 months. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but maybe some daemon which can monitor health, which usually shows like amount of remaining resources on the SSD, may save you time by warning in advance. And that's main motivation.
One question I have is like, is there, apart from Smart CTL, is there any other utility you're using to get this, dig out the information?
Yeah, at the section below, I collected several utilities according to the disks I found on our devices. So in a disk corporation, SSD provides iSmart utility, and Powerfly and Virtuum suggest Smart CMD. Smart Control also shows some information about the disks, but many attributes it shows like unknown SSD attribute or vendor-specific attribute because it claims this disk is not in my database. We can try to contribute to SmartMon tools, probably adding some disks. If you want only one utility, but
so that means based on the vendor, we have to insert those packages, specific packages based on the platform and the vendor. Okay.
Probably to have access to specific disk information, we will need to add some specific utilities.
Okay.
Okay, and to implement it like vendor independent, I suggest to use the existing mechanism of plugins we have in device platform folder. We usually have this for many other components like PSU, for example. We usually have base class, which is either empty or with some basic implementation, or and some class which inherits with some specific information for particular vendor. Okay, to connect it to show utility, we need to extend show main py. It will just convert user arguments like verbose, vendor, or no attributes, no options to the options for SSD specific utility. We usually have that utilities for other components, for interfaces, for PSUs, something else. Just to keep show main py more or less clean, I suggest to move it out of this to a separate utility. This utility will import corresponding device plugin depending on platform SONiC is running on. And these plugins will implement, here are some options for that separate utility and examples how to call it. So it can be called separately, can be called through show. And the base class and vendor specific class to implement functionality. Here are the locations. Base class is common for all. Vendor specific plugins are located in build system under SONiC build image device vendor platform. On the SONiC, when installed, it's user share SONiC something. And the API, I just went through what was available on different disks from different vendors. And there are a list of API functions which can be implemented. They will be implemented in base class through generic utility smart control. And if vendor want it, he can implement it in his plugin. It will overwrite basic functionality and may give more accurate data, or maybe if SmartMon is not able to fetch this data. So I suggest to have the following API. It's a get disk health. It will return health in percents. I investigated this value a little. It appears that each vendor calculates it in its own way, based on some SSD controller information statistics. So it is hard to do this in common way, but for the devices which are known by SmartMon tool, it can be calculated. Get temperature is one of the standard smart attributes. If implemented, it can be provided either by basic utility or specific one. Some information about disk, get model, get firmware, get serial, and the output of this function will be just printed as is, because this is the output of vendor-specific utility. The goal of having all this separately is to unify the output for the user. No matter what is behind what is the implementation, the output can be always the same, like for brief output like this, for something detailed like this one, and so on.
So Andre, I have a question. Like, do we write this into some DB there, so that like anybody can subscribe any?
To DB, not yet. I put it in a separate section. I didn't know whether or not we want to have a daemon for this stuff. Probably it makes sense to have one. Daemon can use the same plugins and query, I don't know, health and temperature periodically.
Okay.
And it can be stored in the DB as well, and can be raised in log or somewhere else. Also, it may have sense to make some parameters available through SNMP. I don't know, for remote monitoring. And I wanted to ask an EU question. Do we have disks with HDD? In that case, maybe show platform SSD health is not accurate name. Maybe we want
Hi, Andrew. I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, Andrew. Could you please move back to the SSD health part?
Okay.
Please move back to the, yeah. Okay, the vendor. Need more?
This one?
Yeah, here. Yeah, yes, here. Okay. I said this data maybe can directly get from iSmart tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
so in your design, you just merge the smart control and iSmart and the smart command 3-part REST. But for iSmart is only for disk. Right?
Okay. Looks like I'm not sure what could be.
iSmart is a test tool only for disk, right? So and I mean just merge the smart control, all these features such as health capacity or firmware version also can get from the smart control. Why are you the iSmart tool in your design?
I have here is the output of and make it bigger. For the same disk, you see it's in a disk. The output of smart control.
Yeah.
And the attributes which are used to calculate something, it just says unknown attribute or something like that, and it states that where was it? That this disk is not in smart control database. So it shows some parameters, but I don't see anything to calculate health. Actually, I know how to do it because comparing to here, I have I see that I can use arrays count average, which is attribute number ID. I can find it here, but here it is
unknown attribute. Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. But you think that if you also merge the iSmart into your design, but for other SSD vendors such as SanDisk, then you have to merge another tools in your design, so that never for so many vendors you have to merge so many tools in your design that will occupy your storage spaces.
Okay, I hope that every vendor can add his own part to implementation of this feature. It may assume adding some custom utility plus implementing design specific, implementing plugin specific to that platform, which will properly interpret the output of that custom utility and provide data requested by SSD health.
Yeah.
Maybe not in all cases we need custom utility. We just need to run it once, learn which attributes are showing what, and then find that attributes in generic output of smart control and use them. It may depend.
That's the good thing about the platform API, that when you create a platform API and if it's not suitable for the vendor specific, then it should be rewritten by the vendor. I think that this is one of the API will be on top of iSmart, and others can implement the APIs on top of another tool or for a different SSD vendor. The code base should be as generic as possible with an option to modify or to override it.
Yeah, all you need is to add your utility if needed, and make your plugin which will fetch, for example, health properly and return it. All the rest should be generic and will be implemented common for all. Also, you can suggest some extensions. I'm not sure I gathered all information which is interesting, but not so many attributes available for SSD and indicate health. So, but if I missed something, by the way, this design is on to the chat. It's on the wiki.
You got some sweet?
SONiC wiki as draft, so you can add comments to that page or just mail me.
Okay.
So I have one comment. I think maybe the number of different SSDs is much smaller than the number of actually devices and platform we support. So I'm thinking, so maybe in the device folder they should just have some metadata including which driver to use instead of providing. So I mean,
for 2700 of Mellanox device 2700 platform, I found 3 different disks.
Yeah. I think the same set of disk is also used. I think probably by other devices. So each device they just
these
tend
plugins
to.
common as well.
Yes. That is what I mean.
Okay, yeah, I can think about some generic part which can properly fetch information basing on manufacturer, for example.
Yeah, I think we used to have these symbol links if we try to reuse some plugins, but I think now this symbol link might cross the directory boundaries. I think might not be it might not be something that we want to use a symbol link to for the code reuse. I think it's probably to have some other design. Maybe we have some in the device folder, we have a JSON file to indicate which driver to use. And then we have those drivers in the SONiC utilities, so the device vendors can decide to use which drivers. They can specify something in the JSON file as part of their platform information, and then when the utility actually loading the driver, we use that JSON file to find out which driver to use and then load it.
Okay, we can have some common engine in SONiC platform common. Need to think. Is there a chance to collect, to ask people to collect what SSDs are used and gather in some one place to have imagination how many different disks we are using? Or I can implement for those which are used for us and others can extend. In that case, maybe we really don't need vendor plugins. We can have it in one common place, but it will depend on disk manufacturer then. Implementation with plugins can be more independent, like you can implement it in your own way, but maybe it's redundant.
Yeah, so it seems like because since it only depends on the disk type, so maybe this plugin is not for every device, right? For disk for per disk type.
Yeah, of course. For us, for example, there will be also inside there will be switch which will judge on disk type, at least 3 different implementations. I can move this part to some SONiC platform common. It then can be used by someone else if they have the same disk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if the disk is unknown, right? So which is the default option. I think in that case, we can just use the smart CTL.
Yep, I was planning to add to the base class implementation, which prints whatever smart control returns. Can put link here, so if there are any comments. I believe Vicky.
I'm not sure if you want to give some guidance for how to calculate the disk health, because that's a very subjective thing, right? So
yeah, on the internet, usually people admit that this is very vendor specific.
Okay.
And, I found at least 2 ways to calculate it. But vendor utility usually provides it as a number.
Okay. Okay, because yeah, right. So what parameters you use to infer on the health could be different from disk to disk, and even for the same disk type, it could vary, between different geometries.
Yeah, it can vary, and that's why I suggest to rely on vendor's utility. They probably have some statistics and more information.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Jin, could we, if we're leaving this topic, could we get a quick update on 2019-04? It's like a week away. What's the outlook on that release looking?
Let me quickly pull out the page. Actually, I don't have an update since last meeting. I will get an update tomorrow after another meeting that talking to all the contributors. So I can send out emails.
Okay,
on the
that'd be good.
okay. April, yeah. Usually I get update on Wednesday. Yeah.
Great. We'll look for that. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. If nothing else, thanks everyone for your time. Yeah. Talk to you next time. Yeah. Or tomorrow we have a test group meetup. Yeah, we can have more discussing on how do we progress on beefing up the test infrastructure, test cases, test coverage. Yeah. Talk to you guys tomorrow.
Shin, what time actually? Shin,
I
what is the time?
haven't sent out the invite yet. It will be PST Pacific time from 10 to 11.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It will be sent to the mailing list of working group mailing list. Yeah, thanks. Bye.